Welcome to this explainer. Listen, for over 2 years now, dealing with AI voice assistants has felt, well, honestly, a little robotic, right? You talk, you stop, the AI thinks, it talks, and then it stops again. But today, we're breaking down a massive shift in how we actually interact with artificial intelligence, because ChatGPT can now listen while it talks. OpenAI's GPT-Live literally just killed the awkward AI pause, creating a brand new, full-duplex voice model that aims to mimic how we humans actually converse with one another. We're going to look at exactly what this new tech does, how you can get your hands on it, and crucially, because this part always gets lost in the hype, what it still cannot do. Let's dive right in. To really appreciate this, we have to look at where we started. The old AI operated essentially in half-duplex. Think of it like using a walkie-talkie. Only one side could transmit at a time. It literally had to wait for you to go completely silent before it could even begin to process a response, which is super unnatural. But now we have GPT-Live, which is full duplex, and this represents a fundamental architectural change. It's moving from a rigid turn-based command system into it actually feels like a real conversation, where both parties can listen and speak at the exact same time. Okay, so let's unpack this term full duplex because it's the engine driving this entire update. Technically, it's just the ability for a system to transmit and receive information simultaneously. But what does that mean for you in everyday practice? It means the AI can now engage in natural backchanneling. It can drop a quick or yeah while you're talking just to show it's actively following your story. You can jump in fast and interrupt it if it goes off topic. Or, and this is perhaps the most underrated improvement in the whole shebang, it can just stay quiet when you clearly need a second to gather your thoughts. No more awkwardly jumping in to fill the silence like the older models did. To accompany this massive structural upgrade, OpenAI has also remastered 9 distinct voices. You've got Arbor, Breeze, Cove, Ember, Juniper, Maple, Soul, Spruce, and Vale. And the early data on this is really compelling. In OpenAI's own human evaluations, where testers had these 5 to 10-minute conversations, users vastly preferred this natural flow over the old advanced voice mode. They specifically praised how well it handles interruptions and how remarkably natural it feels to just, chat without constantly micromanaging your microphone. This brings us to the first of 3 major functional features that will genuinely change your day-to-day workflow. We're talking about a brand new wake word, Hey Chat. Look, if you've ever used a voice assistant, you know the absolute most annoying problem is when it just randomly chimes in because it thought you were talking to it, right? Well, with Hey Chat, you can have the app open, think out loud, or literally talk to someone else in the room, and the AI will just quietly listen in the background and hold back from awkwardly interrupting until you specifically call on it. Now, this architectural shift directly powers feature number 2, which is real-time translation. And honestly, this is arguably the absolute standout feature of the entire GPT-Live launch. Because of that full duplex architecture we talked about earlier, it can now act as a live interpreter for 2 people speaking entirely different languages. It listens to both of you, translates in a single pass to keep things fast, and speaks for each side with only a very, very small delay. Think about that for a second. If you're traveling or trying to learn a new language, this essentially turns your smartphone into a highly capable real-time translator right in your pocket. It's like magic. The third crucial feature here is smart delegation. So here's how this works behind the scenes. GPT-Live is specifically designed to be fast and chatty. It heavily prioritizes zero-latency conversation over deep, complex pondering. But what if you ask it a really difficult question, something that requires deep reasoning, complex math, or maybe a live web search? Well, instead of stumbling, GPT-Live quietly delegates that heavy task to a much stronger background model, which at launch is GPT 5.5. It basically hands off the heavy lifting while keeping the casual conversation flowing with you, and it can even throw up visual cards on your screen for things like weather forecasts or live sports scores while you're talking. So the big question on everyone's mind, what's the cost? Well, GPT-Live doesn't actually have a separate price tag. It rides entirely on existing ChatGPT plans and has just become the new default on both the web and mobile platforms. If you're on the free tier for $0, you get access to GPT-Live 1 Mini, which is a lighter version of the model. But if you step up to the Go plan at $8, the Plus plan at $20, or the Pro tier starting at $100+, you're getting the full, uncompromised GPT-Live 1 model. You just tap the voice icon, and boom, it's there. However, keep in mind, there is a slight catch with the rollout. If you're watching this and frantically checking your work laptop right now, you might not see it. While GPT-Live is rolling out broadly for personal accounts, OpenAI has explicitly excluded business, enterprise, and education workspace accounts from this initial launch phase. So if your account is managed by your company or your school, you are going to have to wait just a little bit longer to get your hands on this full duplex experience.
Okay, moving on to the honest limits, cutting through the hype.
Whenever a new AI feature drops, the marketing always paints it as flawless magic, right? Well, let's start with the speed. The marketing makes it sound totally instant, but OpenAI didn't publish official latency numbers, so independent testers at Agora actually went in and measured it themselves. They found that at the median, GPT-Live was only about 205 milliseconds faster than the old advanced voice mode. Now, to put that into perspective, 205 milliseconds is certainly a nice improvement, and what they noted was that the consistency is much better, meaning far fewer random extra-long pauses. But a 200-ish millisecond bump is not exactly an instant, reality-bending generational leap in raw speed. And here is the major trade-off for that full duplex conversational flow. When you deliberately interrupt the model while it is currently talking to you, it actually suffers a performance regression compared to the older models. Independent testing clocked this delay at about 498 milliseconds, so roughly half a second. Why? Well, because the system is now spending that half second actively analyzing your audio to decide if you actually meant to cut in and take the floor, or if you were just, coughing or saying mhmm in the background. So the whole ability to listen while it talks comes with a slight penalty in how quickly it yields the floor. You should also know that when you open your app, the old legacy voice modes are still going to be sitting right there in your settings. Why keep the old stuff? Because GPT-Live is currently missing several key features that power users really rely on. At launch, the new Live model lacks support for voice interactions combined with video or screen sharing. It also doesn't work with your custom GPTs in a voice session, nor does it support ChatGPT work or codecs. So if your workflow involves, say, pointing your phone's camera at a broken appliance or a piece of code and talking to the AI about it, you are still going to be relying on that legacy voice mode for the time being. Looking at how the community is digesting all this, early reaction was strong but definitely grounded in reality. A launch day informal tally of 482 user reactions showed that the sentiment was 78% positive. People absolutely love the translation feature and the natural conversational flow. But that leaves a solid 22% who were highly critical. And those critics pointed squarely at exactly what we just covered. Those latency regressions during interruptions, the expected server congestion on launch day, and the occasional confident but totally wrong answer. Which actually brings us to a vital point about reliability. OpenAI says the underlying GPT 5.5 reasoning model, remember that's the one GPT-Live delegates the hard stuff to, cuts hallucinations by over 50%, particularly for medical, legal, and financial queries. And don't get me wrong, that is a massive improvement on paper. But we have to remember, a smoother, warmer, much more human-sounding voice does not automatically mean a perfectly truthful answer. Reduced by half is fantastic, but it definitely isn't eliminated. It's incredibly easy to inherently trust an AI that sounds exactly like a confident human expert, but you still absolutely need to verify what it tells you. So, let's wrap this up. Talking to AI just stopped feeling like a clunky walkie-talkie and finally started feeling like a real flowing conversation. You should absolutely try out the live translation feature on your next trip, or just practice a language at home. It's brilliant. But remember to keep your judgment switched on, especially for anything high stakes. And now, I want to hear from you. Tell me in the comments below, what is the very first thing you'd say to an AI you can actually interrupt? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.